What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG. What's shiny new and coming to a PC or console near you? That's right, it's Kingdom Come Deliverance, a medieval RPG with enough character choices for an entire lone wolf collection and enough spoiled meat for a country fair. You follow the story of Henry, son of Chuck Norris the blacksmith, as he goes from village runabout to shiny new knight, because, as is normal in those days, his land was invaded by a usurper whose diplomacy rating is -1. As always with ACG reviews, they're not going to be 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's my review for Kingdom Come Deliverance. A world without dragons, but hey, they got the Headless Horseman, 2 Geralt's bathing, and history's worst archery student. Graphics are up first. Even back years ago when Kingdom was first being shown, it was a looker, and in many ways it continues to be here on all the platforms. Even at 900p on the PS4 normal and Xbox, which does lend it a slightly softer look, all the way to the 1080p on the PS4 Pro and 1440p on the Xbox X. The game's landscape, combined with its draw distance and lighting engine, do a dramatic job to really introduce the gamer to this world right from the start that is almost jaw-dropping in how beautiful it is. And while the wishful thinking of many gamers is that this world would be gigantic, it's not. The developer chose to take a slightly smaller game world overall and really increase the density of the content. And to me, in many places, they absolutely crushed it. In fact, in many ways, it's the distance and how everything sort of fits together. The first time you sprint through the underbrush of a forest, it also dawns on you that unlike most games where the illusion of foliage is actually replete with wrecked, flat textures everywhere to simulate smaller plants and vegetation, Kingdom has very little of that. They are there, but they're a lot less noticeable. And instead, the draw distance for foliage, depending on settings, can be far out or to the point to where it's almost impossible to see. It is spectacular when it comes to the system work. In fact, I actually still remember old pictures of Oblivion with full grass, which never really made it into the final product until mods came around. But when it comes to world building and just sheer exploration and a digital version of that crack-like feeling of let's just climb one more hill, they nailed it. Now, moving on from there, I have to say, other than a few exceptions, I actually like the character models. There is some insane texture detail on some of these, and the first time you meet your lord or even the questionably titled priest of a city, their ruffled looks and the weathered skin is really easy to notice on all versions, or the dingy and dinted armor of some poor lowly serf who is asked to deliver a message to a neighboring castle. It is spectacular texture work in many different areas. When it comes to the animation, I really like some of the battle animations with swords swinging in different directions and deflecting and unblockable counters and quick stabs, all handled fairly well. This is also interesting as many times you're right up in the thick of things, 2 inches away from some bandit whose only job that day is to see what your innards would look like on the outside of your body. And those moments are great. Sadly, that doesn't stand up when you switch over to hand-to-hand fighting, with punches oddly animated and just not really looking near as good as the weapons. Hey, they all carry some feeling of inertia and momentum, which is great, but it's just slightly noticeable. Now, not everything is sunshine and sterling armor reflections here for Kingdom Come. The game has some performance and presentation issues depending on each platform. The 2 original consoles, for example, lack really full lighting passes that the Pro and the X have, and of course the PC, as well as really truncated draw distances and level of detail systems. Doesn't mean they're ugly, it just means it's noticeable. Also, the consoles do have a slight microstutter due to frame pacing issues that even from the major day 1 patch really didn't actually get cleared up. So any kind of sweeping looks or turning can result in a bit of a stutter. If you notice that, it's going to be up to you and your sensitivity for it. And fair to say that many open world games have suffered from situations like this prior to being post-launch patched, so that could just be the fix. And consoles are also capped at 30 FPS. Do they look bad? No, but there are some differences you should be aware of. And of course, that brings us to PC. And unfortunately, the frame rate is a little bit all over the place, and there's really some optimization that still needs to be done. And sure, you would expect that, let's say, a detailed forest or a detailed city might have differences between their average frame rates, and they do, up to 20 to 25 frames per second, though. Also, sometimes just standing outside looking at a damned rain cloud and you'll see 3 to 7 frames difference at times, depending on your settings. It's just something a little bit noticeable. On the i7 at 4.6 with a 1080 Ti and 32 gigs, 4K was attainable at times with 30 FPS, with almost all settings at ultra, but with the FOV cut to its lowest, which, as you would expect, actually makes a massive difference here. The at 1080p frame drops were less noticeable unless you move that FOV up to its highest setting. While the consoles all aim for 30 FPS, luckily there are a large number of settings that can be adjusted in Kingdom for it to suit you. And most anyone with a GPU and CPU from this or last or maybe even last generation can get this up and running and looking pretty good even on the lowest settings. And it's hard not to be impressed when the sunshine rises over some hovel in the deep woods and you see people waking up and stretching and coming out of their homes. Very cool stuff. Here's the thing, it does something a little bit different, and in many ways it excels, but it also shows in a very repeatable way that magic isn't possible when we're talking about most technologies. Sound, music, and voice.
What do you want from his lordship, and what makes you think he'll see you?
Building project. And now I find out it's because of the quality of the stone blocks, or so they say. I don't believe a word of it.
No use begging. I'll give no quarter to filthy murdering heathens.
And you know what? We're going to do sound first. This is actually excellent, from battle where an opponent's fist smashes into your drunken drinking buddy's belching skull to your left and smacking wooden swords against knuckles with training partners, all the way to sneaking through forest floors ready to attack a group of kidnappers and hearing the sounds echo and occlude as they should. Also, of course, every piece of equipment has some kind of different model for sound on it, resulting in me sounding like a black bag full of Campbell's soup cans as I tried to sneak up on some bad guys with my ramshackle half-plate, half-leather armor that I had. Now, overall, while I liked tonally almost all of the samples and the way everything sounded, there was a problem at the starting, and that was that it required a good deal of messing around with the audio levels to get that sort of leveled out. Their default settings, the music was far too loud, the voices were way too quiet, and the sound effects meandering somewhere between them. And you have to go to a couple places to sort of find what your sweet spot will be. Music. So this is very good overall. It's a series of scenes or sequences of music, and while combat has the naturally expected over-the-top moments you'd expect, where at any moment Conan, Beastmaster, and Yor are going to come riding over the hill, it also has a number of more somber pieces that were surprisingly well done, and most of the time sort of flitted in and out between going to villages and homesteads. And while Kingdom Come Deliverance does use an adaptive music system, I have to say that overall it mixes it quite well, and for the most part you really can't tell, which is something that can't be said for some other titles. Voice. First, the voice work itself, I personally think, is excellent. It doesn't matter if it's the main character's hushed promise over a dead body to Brian Blessed being as Brian Blessed could be. And if you don't know who Brian Blessed is, just type Brian Blessed Punch into Google and prepare to be mystified. Incredibly good work throughout, and I also love their attention to detail that was paid to the random NPCs. There was never a time when you just walk up to someone and they talk and it sounds like everyone else was from a Hollywood A-lister agent and the villager was handpicked from someone's high school rendition of Hamlet. Unfortunately, there are some issues here as well, and I could not get rid of them throughout the whole game. And that's the fact that many voices don't tonally mesh with their environment as well as they should. They sound a bit like they were recorded, as they usually are, within a studio and not really within the game world. And the voice and how they mesh together with the environment just didn't really always come together for me. Overall, though, I would say it is pretty damn good voice, and it's got a couple misses here and there. And of course, that brings us to gameplay and a little bit about the story. Now, as I said before, you take on the role of Henry, son of the local blacksmith Chuck Norris, who's obviously super skilled in building stabbing things so he can be commissioned by one of the nobility to make a sword. From that point on, you go and learn various segments of the game throughout its 6 to 7 hour tutorial. Yes, that is actually correct. The first 6 to 7 hours of the game is tutorial and is not open world very much. It is much more closed off there at the starting. And so if you find yourself saying, you know what, I can't do anything other than what it wants, you'd actually be right. Here's the rub though, it's also one of the better stories in gaming to me, so that trade-off, that slow start to really get things rolling, was actually probably worth it. And the fact that the entire story contained across the various lords and ladies asking Henry to do everything from untoward activities like stealing from village police officers to setting up weddings really helps the quests feel unique, even if you're off the beaten path for a bit and not taking a direct route to Henry's desire for revenge. But once you make it into the game proper and start exploring, you take Henry through a series of misadventures as he tries to climb the ancient ages version of the corporate ladder, from peasant to dude with a sword and wearing his mom's quilt as armor. To do that, you take on various quests, explore the land, fight, steal, cheat, and try to make some coin. All the while, you also have to watch your various stats like strength, agility, vitality, charm, speech, visibility, conspicuousness, noise, stamina, health, energy, nourishment, and I think at least one more. And of course, everything in the world that you do, wear, or eat affects those, and they in turn impact the way you move, fight, or how Henry comes across in conversations. Now, much has been said about Henry, and it's true, there is no customization of Henry's looks, but he does have various stats that you raise by actually performing activities, and then those stats have skills attached to them that you can purchase, like the chance to haggle more, or choosing manly odor as a skill. So you end up smelling so bad that somehow you're 50% more attractive to women, but stink so bad, your stealth skill goes down 30%. Because as we all know, in the olden days, it was fun to have sex with someone who smelled like a 30-day-old onion sack rubbed in dog crap. Now, as you're leveling up your attributes and skills, there might be that moment, sort of like when we're at Walgreens where you come across someone and you want to cut them. Cutting is combat, my friends, so we'll talk about that. Now, this is a direction-based attack system, with some weapons having more directions of attacks than others. You can stab and slash with 2 keys or buttons, but you also can choose a direction for the attacks to travel. So you can have basic attacks like 3 stabs or 2 stabs and a slash in totally different directions. This comes into play rather quickly as you're faced off with some opponents in the story that are incredibly apt with a sword right from the get-go. And then, of course, as you do better, you unlock more skills and you can train, and those can get you things like parry and master stroke. And it's not the most complex battle system in the world, but it's actually offering far more than many other titles like this. And while it does feel odd at first, it works really well once you get accustomed to it. Though, admittedly, when 2 or more people are in a fight, pretty much everything goes out the window, as you would assume it would when people are carrying around 6-foot pieces of sharpened metal. Now, on top of that, you have a multi-damage system as well, which is reflected via armor that protects from different damages, meaning some enemies you fight will shrug off one of your weapon attacks until you grab your old mace and smash them in the face. Or you may find the particular fight is too difficult, and changing armors can actually change the outcome of that fight because you're now more protected against crushing or slicing damage. And just because you're good at slicing people up doesn't mean that you have to take sword and board to every single villager. Kingdom Come does have a nice fleshed out system of stats for social skills, and even things like cleaning your clothes can help your appearance. So if you fancy a little dip of the nuts, Kingdom has you covered. It also has a full-on injury system and a health system for food, which can go rotten as you're carrying it around. So at all times you have to watch various elements from rotten food to weapon and armor durability, and even what stolen goods you may have on your person. Because if you steal something, it's marked, and even the worst merchant is going to pick up on the fact that the village idiot is trying to sell Stormbringer at a grocery store. But one thing I do want to talk about is 2 bits of mechanics that have been talked about for Kingdom Come. One is that quest markers won't always show the exact place to go for the next leg of the quest, and the second is that quests can time out. And I have to say, that doesn't really change anything in Kingdom Come. The first isn't really new. We've had that in games that don't show you exactly where something is, and in fact, in Kingdom Come, many do. And when it comes to timed out quests, yes, there are some, and they do, but that's only once you've instigated the quest in the first place. So if a game says, "Are you sure you're ready?" you can just say no. Once you understand that, the uniqueness sort of went away of those 2 elements, leaving good, enjoyable quests, but not really something that was incredibly unique in the space. But you know what? Let's talk about horses for a second. They control terribly, and it doesn't matter if they're bopping from left to right like a pinball machine when you're just trying to go down a muddy trail, or they're in the midst of a majestic field, the wind in your hair, and they suddenly can't get over a rock that's 6 inches tall. No lie, the pathing on these things is terrible when on trails. When off, it just all goes out the window. Now, we've seen this in games before with horses controlling like steam locomotives, so it's not really some type of new thing. I'm hoping it gets patched. When it comes to exploration, though, it's sort of worth the rub. Kingdom Come is just intensely dense with scenery and unique places to go and people to meet. And as I've talked about in the Walk game design series, the feeling of past and present really come together here, with burned out husks and buildings looking like they've been almost reused in various places and states of repair and disrepair. There's a real eye towards nailing that kind of city life. And yes, we can talk about the save system now. Saves occur when you rest, or when something special happens, or when you drink a special schnapps that you can buy from store keeps. The thing with that is, the first couple hours of the tutorial, there's some oddly spaced cutscenes with saves. That can cause you a couple issues, but once you get through that all, it's not so bad. What is sort of bad, though, is the game world feels really empty. I mean, it's like God started up a Hoover vacuum and sucked away all the birds and butterflies and tortoises and flies and wild horses and most travelers in the game world. Aside from a very few stragglers or bandits or a cutscene moment, the chances of you seeing anyone outside the city gates or animals outside hunting areas is very low compared to other games. And when you do see them, it's like 2 birds and a couple deer running around. Also, the game world can feel barren, as there's very little you can interact with that isn't food, stuff at someone's stall, or otherwise. But what bothers me isn't the fact that it's complex. I like that. It's very cool and it works well. It's the fact that it is buggy as hell. And sadly, many of the bugs directly deal with or overlap the very systems that are supposed to make Kingdom Come unique. Let's discuss a couple. For example, if you're on horseback and decide you want to fast travel, sometimes when I ride, my horse would just be gone, leaving me in the center of the road, the horse missing, and for some reason, many times, all my clothes were removed. It was like the friggin' horse whisperer or something. And whistling did not bring that horse back like it should. Also, the theft system, which I did like. You have guards that will occasionally run up to you and state that they're going to search you for stolen property and give you some reason for it. But here's the thing. You have to surrender to them because the game lets you flee if you want, and surrendering is a button combination. No problem there, but you can also just go into your inventory and unload about 40 stolen items at your feet right in front of them, and they'll wait patiently, then search you and be like, okay, man, but I've got my eyes on you. Do you? Do you really? There are also all kinds of loading issues with characters whose heads didn't load into the game. Other times characters would, for some reason, animate over one another suddenly, creating forearm monstrosities performing monologues in midnight bathhouses, and that was one of the creepiest moments I had in the game. Lastly, there's some graphics issues and bugs. Lighting bugs were noticeable, especially with various flickering indoors from light sources, outdoors, that looked almost like a strobe at times. Or the fact that sometimes I would try to climb stairs and the stairs would be like, listen, fatty, go around. They just wouldn't let me go up the stairs. It was so odd. Seriously, there were countless bugs in this game and 2 complete crashes. Kingdom Come, at least for me, does a number of things right, and the pushing of the lack of magic and the history mattering so much with the various skills, much of that made it into the game. But many of the bugs or the gameplay decisions really hamper a great deal of that because they all interact so much. Fun fact. Now, admittedly, the first couple hours can feel rough as hell in this game. Every issue that the game has that would have been far less noticeable if it didn't have a tutorial like this were actually there right from the start. Now, that being said, it was fun being Henry. The story itself is incredibly well done and interesting. Henry is one of the most nuanced and downright hilariously likable characters in a story in a long time, and some of the characters you meet are surprising in their depth, whether due to kindness or cruelty. And while I sort of took the middle ground, fighting sometimes, paying off people others, and socially bartering the rest, the battle system is pretty good, one-on-one, and matching armor and weapons and moves and skills really worked well. Though the game does push the fact that you have a way of getting through it without fighting. So that is, of course, meaning that some people just won't interact with some of these systems. For example, there's lockpicking and there's pickpocketing, there's repairing and alchemy. Many times I was given enough items and I could find so much loot that lockpicking wasn't worth the failure and the incredibly harsh penalties to your stats that the game makes you pay. Alchemy's cool, but overall, many of the times the battles I faced or the situations were really only 1 or 2 situations deep before I had the ability to go sleep or buy stuff anyway. But since you're looking at a game that's at least 35 hours long and maybe double that if you do everything, the ability, of course, is welcome. I would say that there was a lot of fun to be had, but it was definitely impacted by the bugs, and so it sort of spread that fun out and cut it up into pieces where I was just celebrating the fact that nothing terrible had happened. As you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating system, and on the PC, rent is replaced by deep sale. This is for sure wait for a sale. Almost wait for a deep sale with this many bugs. The nice thing about bugs, if there is any nice thing, is that we all won't have the exact same ones. I have no problems with jank in games, especially when it comes combined with some excellent systems that can keep you occupied during the worst parts, but the occasional wonky animations, odd lighting issues at times, and worse, how the bugs really impacted that gameplay and experience so much, that normal jankiness we all expect is added in there to all of that, and there's no real guarantee of any kind of baseline for frustration that some gamers are going to have. In the end, I really enjoyed the story. It was an absolute blast, and when this game is on, it's really on, and it really feels enjoyable. It's just, its ratio isn't the best right now. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Maybe check out Reddit or Twitter, or you can become a patron at the Patreon website. That's how I continue to make you guys reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.